And welcome back to the February retirement piece. So, a number of things have happened, and I had one recording session go wild, and I'm not going to upload a 6-hour video of me wandering around the base trying to fix stuff. So, what happened? Well, first thing is we had some gridlock in our train system because in every one of these intersections it's now got a little gold box around it. They were, um, how can I say this? I got the signals wrong. Let's just come out with that. These two signals right here and these two signals right here. I had intended to have normal signals on the output and a chain signal on the input, like any good Factorio player. But when I put it in, I was in a hurry, and I did there and there, so I had them reversed, and that led to gridlock. Two things. First of all, it was allowing trains to get into the junction a little bit. And second off, it wasn't allowing trains to exit from the junction here until they could go past the midpoint. And the method that I was using, where I had a midpoint uh, block change, meant that my trains were either adjacent to this or adjacent to that. And I don't know. I thought that was deadlock free, even with the missignalings here. Um, the block that I was being led into shouldn't have gone farther in, but the fact is, it did deadlock. So what I've done is I've decided that this area, which I've now surrounded in hazard concrete, is, quote, the intersection, unquote. And because I've got 3/8 trains wandering around, there is no way anything in this intersection area is ever going to be big enough to hold a train. And even if I aggressively prune my inputs and outputs back, I don't believe that there is enough space in here to comfortably hold two trains. At least there wasn't when I was allowing things to move and it got deadlocked. Maybe it was just deadlocking because we would have, 4 trains around in a circle, and yeah, who knows. But anyway, it did deadlock. So now we've got this box. All of the existing signals within the box are now chain signals. And we have chain signals on the inputs and a real signal on the output, and we do not have signals anywhere in between. So I had to go through the entire base here, and wherever I was using that intersection, and re-signal it while also getting rid of the signals in the middle and not changing the signals inside the existing setups. So there's our signal dots. And that applied everywhere. Now, early on in that process, before I even got rolling too much on that, the moment I had a few of them re-signaled, and that was the critical ones are out here where I've got long trains bringing ore in and long trains bringing plate out going down. But sometimes, I have trains in here, returning. Anyway, this area out here was our big congestion area. I think it was this square right here that actually gridlocked. Once I got those, I had to deal with the fact that I now had um, a lot of bad stuff happening. And part of that was a big gridlock down below. We also had a gridlock down here because we wound up with a lot of rocket fuel being returned to the depot where it got picked up by the robots and placed in provider chests and got put in 3 of the 4 cars. So we ended up down here unloading a train full. I don't even remember which place it was, we were unloading a train load of rocket fuel, and we couldn't finish unloading the train because all of its rocket fuel was in the first to second car, and there was a whole bunch of rocket fuel left there, but the third one was empty anyway. Horrendously imbalanced, and all the trains were imbalanced the same way as the chests were. So the train was stuck in the station, and when all that finally timed out, all that rocket fuel went back, sort of. Except it didn't time out. It was scheduled to go back, but it couldn't because it was all backed up, waiting to roll through the station that wasn't letting the train go out. So I cleaned that up. And then there were knock-on effects at other places like Depot 256A here. Happened to get into that same situation. Which, of course, backed up out there and made it difficult for trains to get through, and it got ugly. So with all that done, I sat and I started tinkering, and I've been trying to do the petroleum refinery for some time. And I sat down and I just started working on it. This is on camera. I was working these things out, and I decided to go with a slice organization. For each one of these layers potentially might have more petroleum input, or more petroleum output, or more crude oil input than. Let's put a crude oil tag on there. Potentially might have more input into one particular thing in a layer than we could put conveniently into one row. So I split it into quarters. So essentially we have every 2 cars of the train with some balancing feeds 1/4 of these. And that worked, but it took a long time. And when I looked up and saw that my recording had been going 5 hours, I thought, there is no way I'm uploading this. And of course, by then I had done a save. So what I'm going to do here is just going to go over how this works. So we already organized our our oil field and our depot last time. So this is pretty much the same drop station for crude oil that we have at the depot. The train comes in, that was good timing, and drops all of its oil, fills us back up, and basically we're ordering a train in whenever we have a train. And that's got some margins here. These have a small, they have a pipe that runs horizontally that can balance between the two of them, between the pairs. If things are flowing properly, the amount of oil moving through this pipeline is very small. In fact, it could very well be that I can get rid of it. I haven't decided that yet. But each pair has a pump heading to the south, and they get parted out to 4 pipelines split to the winds. And let's take a look at the rightmost slice. Crude oil coming in. We have 8 advanced oil processing going on, and its output is being aggressively pumped away into the next stage. We also have cracking. I like doing mechanisms where we crack based on need. So for instance, you crack from heavy light oil if you have quite a lot of heavy oil hanging around. Otherwise you don't. So here's our cracking. We've got our heavy oil coming in. Oh, there's some pipe squirreliness here I probably should go over. Well, we already noticed that petroleum gas goes out to the left. Light oil I send straight down. It skips over here and goes down to this pipe, this horizontal pipe, from which we can pull it back to the cracking machines. Packing our cracking machines together like this is a bit, well, it's not something I would normally do. I wasn't trying to make things nice and neat and compact, because you have the problem of this oil and this light oil and this water are adjacent. So you have to go right to an underground. But it works. So come down vertically, get turned around, and come back up. The only constraint now is the path we're coming down through has to not line up with one of our return things, and that works. We get all the way out here, a whole bunch of these. Now we don't need 2 to 1. It turns out that how many did I do here? 12 light oil cracking machines is about right. We also have heavy oil cracking, same thing. We've got heavy oil. This would put heavy oil through here, and if we did the same trick we did here with this coming through like that, we wouldn't be able to stretch it all the way down here. And I wasn't sure that I could, well, in fact, not sure, I was absolutely sure that it was going to be a real pain in the butt to do it all in here. So I just brought it down outside the right here, and it comes back up. So there's our cracking on demand. We only crack when we have a high level in these captive reservoirs here. And the heavy oil all gets pulled back in here. So the last thing we do in this layer is we pull all of our heavy oil together and we make lubricant. Thus the dividing points between the layers in the factory. Oops, I forgot that I was in map mode. This is the dividing point here isn't so much between functional units as I have something I want to output or something I want to input. So we got all our cracking done. First thing we build is lubricant, which comes out of heavy oil. And that just goes right into a train. We don't need a lot of lubricant in this space. We are using it for very few things. In fact, this is 16 times as much lubricant production as we need. But I wanted to put in a burst load. No train to transport. Oh, train in depot. 1A. Hold on. No train in depot is something that I don't see very often. Depot 2 is, in fact, all of my trains are out. My goodness. As we have added more things to the base, I didn't notice that we were using up all of the trains. So let's pause for a moment in our talking. Well, first off, we do need that. So the next train that comes in here, I'm going to need to make a blueprint of and make some changes. We have 12 trains in this depot. So copy the train and not the train fuel. And I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's make it an even 2 dozen trains. There. Whoop, 36. Yeah, I just checked this. Oh, 36 stations. I am not as careful at looking at numbers as I thought. So 36 stations, we have 24 trains at that stop. And I have a mod in setup that allows me to use Control-Shift-Z to change their modes. So all of those are now automatic. I'm suspecting that we probably need like 13 trains sometimes, but that'll hold us. This guy, how many do we have here? This is again 36, and we have 20. So I could do 4 more trains here. Automatic, 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 and I did not get him for some reason. Okay, now where was I? I was talking about the refineries. So it got down to building the loop, and as I was saying, I built extra machines here so that we would front load it. So we initially produce at a very high rate of speed. Lots of lubricant being done at once. Boom. And I'm pretty sure that this is within the capabilities of the refineries. So when these are running full blast, they actually run full blast as long as the refiners are turning out their outputs. So that gets the first train out. And what happens is over time, we'll only get occasional trains, and mostly these won't be running, which means mostly we will fill up heavy oil, and then that will trigger cracking. Same thing will happen with light. We'll see that in a moment. Next stage is our rocket fuel, which we use both for making rockets and for train fuel. So again, this is an overbuild. We pull the light oil from above. Now, in this case, I am not attempting to balance light oil between slices of the factory. So, yeah, each slice has to keep up with its own in this case. If that turns out to be a problem later on, then so be it. We are balancing the outputs. So the only problem here would be if one slice for some reason was behind. I don't see how that could happen, but if that would happen, what would happen would be that other slices would be running at full speed, and we'd be filling up all the wagons from that. So light oil comes in. We turn light oil into solid fuel. This is the most efficient way to make solid fuel in terms of crude. From the direct light oil and from the heavy oil cracked to light. We could also make solid fuel from petroleum, but if we were doing that, I would want to never be cracking light to petroleum, because if you are making solid fuel from petroleum and cracking light to petroleum, you should instead be making solid fuel from light. So just do the whole thing from light here. This kind of presumes we have enough consumption of petroleum so that we don't saturate everything on petroleum and stop making light oil. So I ought to put in a alarm will ring if my light oil ever gets down to 0. It stays there. Or more likely, if my petroleum here hits its peak and refuses to come back down. Actually, the condition is going to be kind of weird. I can't make rocket fuel because I can't do any work here because I have no space for petroleum output. So maybe someday I will work out that alarm and put it in. So this is 10 machines, 10 chem labs making solid fuel, feeding 16 chem labs. 10 chem labs making how much solid fuel? 1,774.5. It feeds into 16 assemblers making rocket fuel, which is 1760. So we are, one of these machines is not going to run. When these are all running flat out, what's going to happen is that we don't have quite enough solid fuel to run all of these. Wait, no, other way. 1770, yeah, okay. So when all these guys are running flat out, we won't be totally saturating these guys. So that'll be one of these machines will slow down. So, as you can see right here, our current loading looks like we're using about 2/3 of our production capacity right now. That makes sense. So we have enough capacity here to produce more than enough rocket fuel for making rockets and for fueling trains and all of that. And again, that ends the slice with, excuse me, ends the row with the station that supplies rocket fuel back to the station. So let me pick up the cat, get on to the next stage of this factory. Oh, come on, Lucy. Ah. So here we have the next stage of the factory, which is surprisingly silent. So apparently I have a bug still. What are we going to do, Lucy? Let's go take a look at this. So my iron input into my petroleum factory is not working. Which means we're getting lubricant, we're getting rocket fuel, we're not getting other goodies. Let's pause this. I can't move one-handed. Okay. I am free of a cat. We're still trying to make our way to the iron station. So this is interesting. Apparently we have no iron present at all, and we're not requesting it. And this constant combinator is turned off. Okay. So at some point while I was doing some maintenance in this factory, I turned this guy off. Yeah, okay. Well, it's good to know that that was just a brain fart on my part. The other brain fart on my part is that we are not balancing our outputs here at all. Either one of these two. And those do. Those actually do. I'm trying to fix up the station names where they appear like this. So I'm going to go ahead and rename that station. This guy right here. So kind-heartedly extracted whatever it is actually batteries for something. Oh, come on. Here. So this is AAA batteries for, yeah, let's just copy one of the other stations and get it. So no station supplying battery. This is telling me that somebody hasn't been getting their batteries. But we know why that is. And we need to put balancers on this. So let's start off by doing it down here on copper so we can at least get the iron flowing again. I like running from the bulk unloaders up to a power pole. That way, if I pick these up and put them down, sometimes you don't get wires coming from the bulk loaders and bulk unloaders. And this enabled condition is everybody greater than or equal to, and you have to have this big enough, it turns out. We found out earlier. So I am going to put that in everywhere. And I'm just going to copy all of this up. For some values of all. And this did not copy the program. So again, the mini loaders, I'm not always clear on when they get programmed and when they don't. So I do a snap to grid with 7. And then get in here and go. Right. Then flip it. Like that. There. Okay, that's all wired up. Now these guys are just going to allow everything out until I get the calculation of the mean. So that's here with a arithmetic combinator. I'm just going to put it just like Yeah, let's do this out here. So this picks up the total input, total in stock, and we are going to divide by -8. So it's the negative of the mean, which gets summed back into there. And you notice that some of these are on and some of these are off. Ones that are off are the ones that are lower than the others. So now I can drop that in place there. And now both of these should be neatly balancing their inputs here. There we go. And we're going to get some additional problems down here until we've caught back up again. Okay, now when I'm in the Spidertron, my personal lights aren't as bright, so let's walk around outside it for now. The next step is to use the petroleum that I have made so far, together with the iron and copper plate that I just imported, and we're going to make batteries, which we export. Batteries require sulfuric acid, but we also export some sulfuric acid back to the rest of the base, and that uses sulfur, which again we export sulfur back to the base. And we can check this. You'll notice here we've got the batteries coming in right in there into the launch complex. We have sulfur used directly in chemical science, and sulfuric acid is used directly when making processing units. So there's batteries here for the flying robot frames as well. Oh, and I can mark these off as complete. We just fixed that and that and that. We'll mark off plastic once we've reviewed it here. Think of this as my code review before I commit the factory, even though the factory has already been committed. I am using, this is actually a loading station that I worked out. It's fairly low profile. It works best when there's one line coming in, which I can split out the 4 directions. It's a little bit scungy in that I don't have a good balance. Hold on. Okay, that was just my daily phone call from people that are informing me my car warranty needs to be reestablished. Yeah. Okay, so I worked out this loading station. My original intent was to use it to load up things where I had one belt coming in and I wanted to have the stations closely packed, and it works. So I have used it in place, literally just plopped it in. It does give us a loading speed of 8 blue belt loading speed and a 4 blue belt consumption from the factory above it. Same loader here for batteries. You can tell that we are not producing batteries very fast. This factory does not require a lot of batteries. And you can also tell that we haven't backed up on batteries because we have been not making batteries for some time. Let's take a look at this. The last 10 hours, there's our battery. So here, we had batteries, and then I got to messing around with things for 3 hours. And at the end of it, I actually turned off the battery machine while I was doing other things. And then you just saw me realize it was turned off. You know, the iron input was turned off. So boom, there we go. Sulfuric acid. this is total overkill. It really is. But what I've got is the 2 slices on the right come in on the right, 2 slices on the left come in on the left. We dump it into a couple of buffer chests here, buffer tanks, which can balance if they want. I use pumps to divide it in half for absolutely no good reason, half going nowhere. In fact, I am going to just simplify the heck out of all of this right now. So we have the sulfur coming in from the far right. And we have this sulfur coming in from not the far right. So I want this guy just to go right down there. Same thing with him. Oh, wait a minute. That was so left over from something more interesting. I'm just going to draw that right across there. That doesn't need to exist. So this is my simplify thing. There. So each sulfur line comes down, and we go ahead and dump them in here. I think I'm going to go ahead and put some pumps in to pull. Because I am not sure what happens if I have an overproduction of sulfur in one area which will back up the other line. In practice, we have more than enough sulfur coming down to keep everything saturated very quickly. It might be good, however, to put some pumps in at the top, pushing. So let's do that. Again, for this factory, because we are overproducing, everything will tend to stay full, and these pumps are really not necessary. But from a general thing, if we are using about what we're producing, that will be low. And because we weren't using a pump to extract it, it could very well be that it wouldn't, wouldn't pressurize those pipes nicely. We still are going to have limited throughput, but our total throughput needed is so low it's ridiculous. What we can achieve here in items per minute, 5460. Let's see, that is, well, if we had a offshore water pump, pumps 1200 per minute. Ooh, per second. Oh. Okay, so this is really slow. So you're only getting 91 per second. And everything is like tens to hundreds of that. So yeah, we don't need pumps on the sulfur, but having them there make sure that things will stay nice and tightly packed. So that gets our sulfuric acid out. So we've got sulfuric acid, we've got batteries, we've got sulfur. Notice the batteries are starting to get scheduled now as we have built up a decent stock of them. So now we want to make plastic. Plastic requires a lot of coal. So I bring in a lot of coal. And I want to split it 4 ways. I want to balance across all of the wagons. And I want to make sure that each of the quarters gets an entire packed blue belt of coal. So that's how I'm doing it. I'm using the conditional balancers here, and all of them are programmed for the program we found out works best. And we get 1 lane from each wagon merging into 1 lane of output, and we do that 4 times. So that should keep things in balance. This means I don't need to put in any 8-to-1, 8-to-8 balancers. It would be wonky. I could do a single 8-to-8 balancer and part out to the 8 down to these guys where they become 1. This is really enough plastic to eat more than. Oh, okay, I did make it slightly smaller. Okay. So my original plans had this being large enough that I required slightly over oh, that was my limit there. These guys produce just slightly over 2 full blue belts of plastic. I really did. I tried to squirrel the inputs around. I just couldn't get it to pack. So instead, I just bring them all out. I merge pairs of machines together with lane balancers. I did a 4-to-4 balancer followed by a pick 2. This is overkill. I think might be overkill. Might not be overkill. I think it's overkill. But it works, and it provides you with some nice, smooth, packed lanes of plastic, which you can then get dumped down in here. 8-to-8 balancer to assure that we pick appropriately from all the machines. And then we grab 4 lanes. You know what? No, I did it. Okay. For the moment, I was a little weirded out by the fact that I didn't see all of the lanes. For people worried about capital efficiency, you want to always use your undergrounds to their full length. In this case, if I see all 4 lanes moving here, that tells me something. And if I don't see them, so I thought we pulled 4 lanes. So we pull all 8 lanes. We have the capability of sinking all 8 into each station. Each belt gets split half and half between 2 stations. So either station can fill at the saturated rate. If they both, I've seen trains pull into both stations at once, at which point we still saturate these 8 belts and we fill at half rate while we're filling them both. So either one of these stations could sink the entire output of the factory. And that is my oil refinery all the way out through plastic. So we go back to factory planner and we mark plastic is done. I can mark water is done. Everybody has their own water. Kind of skipped over that on the way through, but you'll notice that as we need water, I've been putting in stone wells. These are 5x5, so they're not really neat and tidy, but as long as you're willing to go all the way out to the end here or sit in the middle and use one on either side or whatever, it works. You could easily just do that as well. This would allow you to put a power pole down there. They are one tile short of being two machines, so they fit in a lot of places. Because, like the other one, keeping these slices looking similar allows me to correct build problems by copy pasting from one to the next. So we needed water there. We needed water for cracking here, and we needed water here. Now the question in my mind is that enough water? Stillwater well has a pumping speed of 1200 per second. These guys require items per second, so it's not too much there. These guys require that, so one well is still enough for that. So we're good. And that is the refinery. Oh, I have two liquid outputs, sulfuric acid and lubricant. We are outputting to 4 long trains. So this required construction of this depot down here. Oh, and I have another blinky. There. Okay, so here's our new depot. This depot contains trains that are a locomotive and 4 tanker cars. We got 6 of them. We don't need very many of these. In practice, I haven't seen us use them very often because the only things we're moving around are our sulfuric acid and lubricant. All of our other major fluid flows are strictly within this petroleum area. A very large amount of light oil is needed to make our rocket fuel, but that's proceeding from here to here, so from stage 1 to stage 2 of the refinery. It doesn't have to go out on a train. Likewise, petroleum is used in sulfur, it's used in sulfur, it's used down here in this stage, and it's used in the plastic stage, which I didn't mark yet. Plastic. Yeah, let's do it there. Okay, so the bulk user of our petroleum gas is plastics. And again, they're produced here and cracked here. We come swinging down. We get some taken off to be used in that stuff, the sulfur and sulfuric acid batteries. And then we come down here to where we used in plastics. This would be large numbers of trains. Let's take a look at this. Wagons per minute. We'd be running, let's see, for petroleum, plastic alone would be looking for a train 5 wagons per minute. So what is that? That's every 48 seconds we would want 4 tanker cars. That's a fairly good pace. We could do that. Okay, we could have made that a separate factory, and it would have kept some trains running. Wouldn't have been too bad, but there it was. Again, sulfuric acid. Yeah, right. Total output from our factory, though, our input is 5 trains per minute. Well, 5 crude oil wagons per minute. We're coming in at 8s. So 5/8 of a train per minute. Yeah. Well, that's a train every twice 48 seconds. So every minute and a half we get a train coming through. And the rest of these are all fairly low. So just this one guy here, because we have 3.6 per minute wagons per minute of gas being produced here and 2.1 being produced there, and they all get parted out. So yeah, I could have built this refinery as separate boxes and moved a whole bunch of liquids around. But I am worried that moving liquids in those quantities might end up with us having a train that doesn't completely unload. And we do have our configuration set. Let's double check that. LTN, double checking our configuration here. So stop timeout is 0. So if we cannot unload completely, if we cannot satisfy an unload in a station, we simply wait. We never go back because I couldn't unload something that somebody asked for. We got finish loading turned on, so we will wait for inactivity. This works well with the filter setup we have, and there's the thing I was talking about. If I have a fluid train returning to a depot that has fluid, this will just remove it. It saves you from having to work out a unload mechanism that can unload any kind of fluid from the train. That's the other worry, is once you get one kind of fluid in, it'll completely clear it out. You can't get the next kind of fluid in. Okay, so we're all set. So the other half of the work was then going back to where we use all these things. Let's start with processing units. So I'm going to place my radar down here. Okay. So processing units replaced these two stations. They are now requesting in the sulfuric acid and requesting in the plastic. Same kind of stations we've used before. This is, slight modifications to request it in on fluid trains. The belts being empty here, this just means we have slightly less iron on the right than on the left. That's okay. The key thing is that we continue to provide iron as we draw. And there was some initial imbalance when this was drawing. There we go. So that shows you we can draw those guys. Red chips require plastic. They require quite a lot of plastic. So I decided to maximize my train unloading here. So I was watching this and we could hardly deliver the plastic fast enough. So I increased our unloaders to unload 6 blue belts in parallel. You see how fast that moves once we get going. So yeah, 6. These are 6 to 2. So we balance draw from these guys, 2 lanes of output, and this is through we need loaders that are filtered, not filtered, excuse me, they are controlled to maintain a balance across the boxes so that we can unload everything in parallel as quickly as possible. That's fast. Okay. And that brought us right up to 52,000 plastic bars in those boxes. And see how because they are level, we are able to get those 2 blue belts per cargo wagon, despite the fact that these guys are going to stutter. They have to stutter because that's the only way they can throttle things to keep the boxes balanced. As we get further in, we're going to get occasional holidays in these belts. So we're not quite 8 full blue belts pulled from these boxes. That's okay because we use not quite that much plastic down here. Let's take a look at our rates. In terms of express transport belts, this factory only really needs 4.4 belts, and we're giving it 8, so we're good. So the next place where we are using our petroleum products, here, flying robot frames. This is really simple. Flying robot frames don't require very much lube. They do require some. I request in full trains, so whenever we have room for another train load plus margin, we grab another train. These guys have pipes that allow them to self-level, and then the output gets drawn out down to here. Very low quantity, so very rare train. I wonder, if I grab this and do it in terms of train wagons per minute, 0.079 train wagons per hour. So we're 5 wagons per hour, roughly. So every 10 to 15 minutes, they send another. Oh, that's a wagon. So every 45 to 50 minutes, we send a train with 4 more wagons full of things. Every hour or so-ish. Yeah, that's about right. Any other petroleum products down here? Sulfur for chem science, not a lot of it. Let's look at this in train wagons per hour. So 11 wagons per hour. Because all of these are still the infinite supply. So we have not yet converted our use of raw materials in the science assembly areas. That is likely what is going to increase our mining and our smelting. And we get down here. Of course, the rocket fuel stations have really changed. I reworked this. We had a couple of stations. The stations look like this when I'm using the infinite supply. This way we can grab from the infinite supply and put them in very restricted supplier chests. But when you go to a requested train, it's very important to even out the draw across these. And if you don't, you get the problem we saw earlier with the rocket fuel, where we can unload some cars but not others. So for these stations, which need to unload in the logistics network, we need 2 belts worth of unload into a chest, into an active provider. So this forces it right out onto the logistics network. And our request is based on this. We had that for rocket fuel and LDS, so I just put that same thing in place for the batteries. And I think I changed how these worked. I think they were with normal stack inserters and such. I put them to this because I'm trying to think in terms of what happens when later on we need to increase even further. And we may or may not ever do that, but let's do the design based on that anyway. So each part of the design, where it can be scalable, I'm making it scalable. So there's our request. We currently have 19K, it's over on the far right, 19K batteries that are in the network, and we are asking for, when we fall below 4,000, bring us up to 24,000. So this guy has one outstanding train that is going and getting stuff. He's going to be getting 4,000. That's not a very big request. is what he needs. Now these, the vehicle assembly area, let's see. When we look at this in terms of train wagons per hour of input stuff, our biggest one is the rocket fuel. As you see, well, biggest actually low density structures. So LDS and rocket fuel are both a lot of trains per hour. Train wagons per minute. So LDS is just under a train per minute. Okay, that's good. That's our biggest one. And rocket fuel is a train every couple of minutes. So those are our heavy hitters, and they're not that bad. So that's our petroleum rework. Now the next stage is going to be relocating the RCUs and flying robot frames up into this row, because I want to start relocating the science up as well. So the science will be going in this row here. And that does mean that I want a station down here that's collecting up all the science from all the stations to get sent down to the labs. Now the trick is going to be with science. I have been belting it. Okay, that's okay. I'm wondering if what I want to do is build a station that accepts trains with mixed cargo. We haven't done that yet. So one train would go out and pick up any science we want and deliver it, and see if LTN will say pick up from these 4 places and deliver to this one destination. It might be interesting to mess around with that in our science area. However, moving our science around by train will take this from this nice even flow to we produce for a while, and then a big bolus of science goes to the research labs. We continue producing into buffers while the research labs does that. And this is going to make us much more bursty. So I'm split. I am thinking that in this case, having trains deliver our science may be counterproductive. So I don't know, maybe the only reason to move these is to fix these stations that are currently using infinite inputs. Because these guys, these are all actually going to be 3/8 trains delivering this stuff. So I need a new layout of the area. I don't think we can put them this close together and get the output rates we need. So I will need to redesign these. So they will need to be moved. Once they're moved, perhaps we still end up sending their outputs down on these single belts. We'll see. Anyway, that's a discussion for another time, another episode.